One of the most common questions we get about diet is, how much do I feed my bird? How much, how much, how much? If you have our natural feeding system cookbook and you've watched the diet conversion course, you may now be asking yourself the same question. But Jamie, how much do I feed my bird? Well, there's a reason we don't tell you. It depends. It depends on your individual bird, their lifestyle, their metabolism. There's no ideal amount of food for every budgie or every macaw. Every single bird is so different. Here are some examples from members of our team. My manager Ashlyn's birds are Tango and Woodrow, both blue and gold macaws. Tango is about 8 years old and is a freestyle flyer, so he's very, very active, whereas Woodrow's in her late 20s and unfortunately has some arthritis from past dietary issues, so she just doesn't fly. Both of them are about the same size and are about the same weight, and yet Tango eats 3 times as much as Woodrow does. My team member Jen's birds, Fennel, a 2-year-old female eclectus that weighed half as much as Pilot, a 2-year-old male blue-throated macaw, but ate the exact same amount of food, despite Pilot being a larger and more physically active bird. Fennel just seemed to have a higher calorie requirement to maintain her weight. In other words, she had a higher metabolism. Now, instead of just giving you a generic amount, we will give you the exact formula that we use to determine the perfect portion to feed each individual bird in our flock and every project bird we've ever worked with. It's super simple and it just takes a little math, but don't worry, if I can figure this out, you can too. Seriously, math is my worst subject. To get an accurate reading, you'll need to make sure your bird has no access to food for at least 12 hours overnight. After your bird has had BirdTricks pellets for dinner, go ahead and take out any uneaten food. Do not leave any food in their cage at all. 12 hours may seem like a long time, but your bird should be sleeping for a full 12 hours anyhow. We want to make sure they don't wake up before you and start snacking on last night's leftovers. That will not give us an accurate reading. The next morning, you can go ahead and start this process. Here's what you'll need: a gram scale, a pre-made batch of seasonal feeding system or our freeze-dried version, BirdTricks pellets, and clean bird food bowls. To start, we're going to provide a lot more food than your bird is able to consume. For medium to large birds, this means starting with about 40 grams of seasonal feeding system. For tiny birds to small birds, we'll start with 20 grams of seasonal feeding system instead of 40. This is a lot of food and we're expecting there to be leftover food, but should your bird gobble up all of this in the span of an hour, you are welcome to give them a bit more. Remember to weigh it first. Realistically, they're not going to be able to eat a whole 40 grams of this food, or 20 grams for the little guys. But for those larger macaws, this may need to be as much as 60 grams. So if you need to go up, make sure to track what you added and be ready to start trimming that back if it was too much. This will make more sense as we go into the process. Step 1, turn on your scale, hit the tare button to zero it out. Step 2, place your empty bowl on the scale, then hit the tare button again. This will keep the scale from counting the weight of the actual bowl. Step 3, add seasonal feeding system to the bowl until you reach 40 grams. Try to be as exact as possible. If you add a little too much, take out little bits until you're at 40 grams or 20 grams for the littles. Step 4, this is the fun part, feed your bird that hefty serving of seasonal feeding system. For those larger macaws, if they consume this up in minutes and seem to be looking for more, and the 40 grams is a much smaller portion than what they have been maintaining weight on during this diet conversion, this would be the time to add some more in and track what your new starting point will be for the next time. We do not recommend this going higher than 60 grams, even for the largest macaws, as there are some birds that are just foodies and will consume everything you put in front of them to the point of obesity. Wait about an hour. Most birds will eat all that they intend to in less than 30 minutes, but we want to give the slowpokes enough time to finish their meal. Step 5, turn on your scale. Hit that tare button to zero it out. Yes, you do have to do this every time you go to use your scale. And step 6, place an empty bowl on the scale, hit the tare button again. Step 7, scrape any leftover food from your bird's bowl into the bowl on the scale. Step 8, deduct the number you see on the scale from 40. or whatever amount you started with. This gives you the amount of food your bird consumed for this meal. Write this number down. You will need to chart this for every meal for the next 7 days. For your bird's evening meal of BirdTricks pellets, you'll need to do the same process. The only difference is the amount you will be starting with. We do not recommend 40 grams of pellets to start. That is way too many pellets. 25 grams is what I recommend starting with, since that's more than even my large macaws will eat. For the tiny and small birds, you'll start with 15 grams instead. Here you can see me doing the same exact process with pellets instead of seasonal feeding system. Again, you will need to chart this for every meal for the next 7 days. After the 7 days, you'll find an average for your bird for each meal, and that will be your bird's perfect portion. It's important to note that during these 7 days, I recommend not doing any training with your bird. If your bird is getting a lot of treats during training sessions, they're likely to eat less of their main food, and that will alter your numbers for this process and just leave you a bit more confused. Once you've figured out the baseline amount of food your bird needs at each meal, you can then adjust accordingly on days that you do lots of training. Be sure to weigh your bird daily before their first meal and keep track of the days you train versus the days you don't and how that affects your bird's appetite each day. This may seem like a lot of work, but like any good habit, it becomes easier over time and is well worth doing. Being able to look back at the log of your bird's weights, appetite, and training motivation can be invaluable in finding patterns and informing future decisions about their health. We have a free downloadable weight tracking journal available on our website at birdtricks.com. So why do we use our perfect portion formula? The number one reason is health. We want to ensure that our birds are getting enough food without over or underfeeding them. First, overfeeding your bird is just plain unhealthy for them, just like it is for us, and can cause a lot of disease that can go unnoticed until it's too late to fix the problem. You can also accidentally underfeed your bird if you assume that this is the amount they should eat without taking input from them. Underfeeding can quickly lead to malnutrition and a weakened immune system, which makes them vulnerable to all sorts of germs in their environment, leading to illness and even death. Think of it this way. We humans know it's not healthy for us to overeat or undereat. We can all agree that it's important that we eat nutrient-dense foods and to eat to the point of satisfaction at each meal. That's exactly what our goal is with the perfect portion formula. We figure out just the right amount to feed our birds in order to get them to feel satisfied and nourished every day, without overdoing it to the point that they don't have the energy to move around and enjoy their birdie activities. The next reason we do this is to prevent unwanted behaviors. Providing them with an overabundance of food keeps them from being physically active, mentally engaged with their environment, and is a common trigger for hormonal behavior. All of these often lead to screaming and biting, the most common reasons that people rehome their birds. Third, we want to prevent waste. Another really important reason to feed just the right portion is to avoid wasting food and money on food. Let's face it, parrots are wasteful. They chuck a good portion of their food all over the place, some more than others. And in the wild, this behavior serves a great purpose. Seeds and partially eaten food fall on the ground where ground foraging critters eat the leftovers. Nature's cleanup crew. And seeds eventually grow into trees. What a beautiful, symbolic relationship. But inside our homes, this behavior is 100% useless. You can take the parrot out of the wild, but you can't take the wild out of the parrot. Despite living in our homes, our birds still follow that strong instinct to chuck their food all over. But did you know that parrots are really smart? So when you overfeed them, they allow themselves the liberty to chuck more of their food. When you feed them just the right portion, they're less likely to throw out that food. They know this is all there is, and they are not as likely to waste it. Feeding the perfect portion also affects training motivation. Are you planning to train with your bird? Good luck trying to convince a bird that is full of food to work for more food. Though less important, this is another good reason to feed your bird the right amount of food. Training motivation. By feeding our birds separate meals rather than a 24/7 buffet, and by serving them the right portion at each meal, we can predictably use the times during the day when they're naturally hungrier and more motivated to work for food, like right before breakfast and right before dinner. So is this perfect portion going to be the same for the life of my bird? In short, no. In long, No, I wish we could say that this is a one and done formula that takes out all the guesswork forever, but it is not. The perfect portion is what is perfect for your bird right now in this moment in time. There are going to be changes to this for many birds for various reasons. One, the first thing that will affect this is the amount of training you're doing with your bird. Now, we want to be very careful to consider having a designated amount of treats each day for training that will keep your bird on track with their perfect portion. This is critical because you can end up accidentally going backward with the success of diet conversion by giving too many treats, and then suddenly you have a bird that is ignoring that perfect portion, waiting for the overabundance of treats they know are coming through training. When you have days that you skip training, then you may need to bump up that perfect portion just a bit, or offer those treats through foraging to keep everything balanced. For those days when there was a heavier day of training, then you should take that into consideration and adjust the dinner portion accordingly so you don't end up with an unmotivated bird the next morning. This should be the case only occasionally though. Again, we want to keep both the foundational diet balanced and the training treats in the proper portions to not sabotage the base diet. It's similar to filling up on dessert and having no room or desire to eat your veggies afterwards. The next thing that needs to be considered is hormone fluctuations and/or molts. Sometimes when a bird is going through either of these, their calorie needs to shift a little bit. This should be very temporary, and if it isn't, then a vet visit may be needed. Third on the list are baby birds and aging birds, both of which can have different needs at these stages. With baby birds, we want to make sure that they are completely fledged and weaned before the perfect portion is even put into place. Once they are weaned, flying, and completely through diet conversion, then it will depend on the species, age, and activity level as to when it will be time to move forward on structured meals with the perfect portions and away from the buffet that they needed while maturing into adulthood. If you're unsure of this for your particular species, please consult with your avian veterinarian. Aging birds may suddenly need more calories to maintain their weight as they become more geriatric. If you see your older birds start to lose weight and the food and the training have not changed, the first step would be a vet visit to rule out illness. If everything checks out, it may be that your bird's perfect portion needs to be increased now. And of course, anytime you're dealing with a sick bird, this all might need to be put on hold based on the directions your avian veterinarian has given you as the best way to support your bird during its illness or recovery from a surgery or other procedure. If you have questions about this or require one-on-one help, please reach out to us to set up an online or even in-home consultation with a consultant here at BirdTricks.